All right, let's talk about Zach Wilson, a very interesting prospect that's come out of the draft these past couple of years. I want to talk about it all. I want to talk about why some people fell in love with him so much coming out of college. Can't quite remember if one of them was me. Not exactly sure. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. Okay, no, I'm joking. I was a huge fan of Zach Wilson. I had him as my number one quarterback that year. So why was I wrong? Why were a lot of us wrong? Again, he went second overall. What happened and how did he fall off so quickly? Well, I want to start off with this play. I did two main things preparing for this video. I went back and watched a lot of his college tape. I watched a good chunk of his NFL tape, and I rewatched a 24-minute video on this channel with me basically raving over Zach Wilson and talking about why I liked him so much. So this was one of the plays I showed in that initial video talking about what I liked about him so much. And I have to say, watching the tape and watching that video, I kind of convinced myself again that he could be great. Okay, we've seen the NFL stuff, so I know that I'm not going to hold out hope necessarily. But when I was watching the tape, I really did see a lot of great stuff here. Something like this, it's zone coverage, and you have a receiver running a deep route. It's cover 3 zone, so single safety deep, one-on-one matchup on the outside, and watch what happens. So, Wilson takes the snap. Wilson is going to look in that direction. He's going to fire in that direction, and at this point, there is a potential window for this throw to be made. And look where Wilson puts the ball. I mean, it's exactly where you would want that ball to be. It's incomplete, but that was a perfectly thrown football. And this is the kind of thing that he was doing consistently in college, in my opinion, was making these types of throws. These highlight reel level plays weren't just happening every now and then. One critique I've heard after the fact is, oh, people just liked him because of his great pro day. No, he was legit doing this in games. This one's another one. This time not as far of a throw, but keep in mind, it's also a lot further, maybe not necessarily down the field, but towards the side of the field. Wilson is taking the snap on the hash marks closest towards the bottom of the screen, but the throw is outside the numbers towards the top of the screen. So while it's not necessarily that far down the field, it is pretty far, towards the side of the field. Again, look at how one display begins. You're going to see receiver do a good job, give him a window to make this throw, but still, it's not a wide open window necessarily. However, as you see, Wilson's throw is right on the money, and they're able to get a touchdown there. That was on 3rd down and 15, too. These are really good plays from Zach Wilson that, again, he was making consistently. So, what happened? What went wrong? Well, one thing I have to say is that I thought that for the most part in the NFL, he didn't really have an issue with these types of plays too frequently. The issue was these types of plays just don't happen as frequently in the NFL as they do in college. It was a lot of stuff like this. I mean, this is what the Jets really wanted a quarterback to be able to do. These over-the-middle type plays, run a play action, hit a receiver who's over the middle. That's what you want that's what the Jets wanted to do in the NFL. And this was a play I even brought up in that initial video I made of, one of the few negatives of his game. Watch how he's going to take the snap. I think his footwork kind of gets a little bit lackadaisical as he's getting hit, and really probably should have thrown an interception there. He felt like he could make every throw in college, and he could make a lot of them. And his footwork would get a bit lackadaisical at times. And these were the issues that I had with Zach Wilson, was that these things really happen. That was one of the few issues I had coming out of college. The thing is, you can say issues like this about literally every single prospect, and this is just what makes evaluating quarterbacks so difficult. Again, some people love to just dunk on analysts for missing quarterback, picks, which I get it. It's fun, whatever, fine. Go ahead and do that if that's what you want to do. However, I think it's also fair to just question, well, why is it so difficult? Why has really no one consistently been able to evaluate quarterbacks properly? And I think this is a great reason, where it's like Wilson had a couple of issues, right? Wilson struggled with a little bit of footwork, tried to make too many throws, and he, at the NFL level, really struggled at the easy stuff. That's one thing I also was curious about, is how often in college did he struggle at the underneath stuff? Well, I looked at this. This is, courtesy of Pro Football Focus. This is his stats in each, area of the field. So you see all the way down the field, stuff was great. A great passer rating, not a perfect passer rating, but a very good passer rating on the outside left of 14 throws, 430 yards, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions. Again, great stuff over the middle and great stuff on the outside to the right. Outside of numbers were elite, but even over the middle, that was really good. A little bit worse on the right side than the left side. I would assume all that has to do is just who typically lined up on either side of the field. Usually that's what causes differences there, or just luck and happenstance. But again, the underneath stuff, the kind of the smaller stuff that I was more interested in, was still very good. At least, the production at BYU. I mean, you see that just going left to right on the 0 to 10 range, passer rating of 117 on the left, 119 over the middle, and 126 towards the right. There was one area of weakness, which is the outside right on the underneath plays. So under or behind the line of scrimmage, you see that bottom right hand thing says, a passer rating of 47.9. But keep in mind, 2 for 5 for 9 yards. It's just a small sample size there. Same thing if on the left, it's 3 for 3 for 19 yards. In the middle section is the only one that had a decent sample size, and he was very good in that. So again, maybe you could argue that this is just box score stats, and that's not the best way to measure this stuff. However, going over here, I looked at his Pro Football Focus grades in this area as well, and there's some truth to it, right? He was definitely better on the deep stuff and then on the medium stuff, and you see a drop off as a below 70 grade behind the line of scrimmage, and then the short area was 82.9. But that doesn't necessarily mean that he was actively bad in those areas. He wasn't. He was still good at the 0 to 9 range, and still above average behind the line of scrimmage. And when I watched tape, really, I mean, there were plays that jumped out at me, but I don't think I would have ever noticed them had I not already known what I know now about Zach Wilson, that he would, in fact, at the NFL level, struggle there. So what do we do from here? What have we learned? What do we know now? What have we learned here from all of this with the Zach Wilson stuff? Is it fair to say, well, sometimes great prospects just don't work out, is what it is? Maybe, but that also kind of feels a little bit like a cop-out, right? Like, I don't know if that's totally fair to say that it's just simply, I wasn't stupid. He was a great prospect that just didn't work out. There has to be reasons for it. And I think maybe the one thing to point to is that, pay attention to the mistakes a little bit more. Pay attention to the areas of weakness, and maybe even look at some of those areas of weakness and see if he's improved on those from years past, and see if there's reason to believe it could continue to improve. Maybe it's worth thinking about, hey, a lot of people view it as, you're great at the good stuff, the down the field passing, you'll develop the over the middle stuff and the underneath stuff, but it doesn't always work out that way. And maybe it's kind of similar to, I think about baseball. People used to always assume that if someone was a great contact hitter, they would just naturally develop power, but it usually didn't work out that way. Maybe it's the same way in the NFL. Maybe it's not, I don't know, but there's reason to believe that. Also, now, I think I might have got it backwards. I think people maybe thought that if you had great power, you'd naturally develop contact. It's one way or the other, I forget, in baseball. But you get the analogy, you get the point of it, is that, just because we believe something to be the case doesn't mean it always works out that way. Again, for someone like Zach Wilson compared to Trevor Lawrence, they both had issues on tape. Trevor Lawrence, his college stuff was literally just, throw a screen pass, fake a screen pass, and throw it down the field. That was basically what he did in college, and he was very good at it. But, he had an adjustment period in the NFL, but he was able to adjust, and he was able to get better. So, to me, the way I view Zach Wilson is, while there are negatives I see on his tape, I still, if another player came out that was like Zach Wilson, would still think to draft them very high. Maybe I shouldn't have gone with him over Lawrence in hindsight, but I can still sit here and say, no, there was legitimately good stuff on tape. People didn't just overvalue him and overhype him because of his pro day. He was already projected to go number 2 overall before his pro day. I remember after he got benched this season, and it was kind of, the end of Zach Wilson, really, as a starter, at least in the NFL. I remember there was a tweet that said that, they didn't even have Zach Wilson as a 7th rounder that year. I think if you don't have Zach Wilson as a 7th rounder, you're a bad analyst. I do. I think there's no excuse to have Zach Wilson, not even as a 7th rounder. You take a special teamer in the 7th over someone who can make the throws that Zach Wilson can. I think that would be silly. I still do not hate the process of drafting someone like Zach Wilson and believing you can, get him to improve on those weaknesses. And it's probably a great example of why having those meetings with quarterbacks is so important. Being able to talk to them, and you seeing if you talk to Zach Wilson and he says, my footwork was a bit sloppy, but I've been doing these drills to practice on it, and I think I know what I have to do, then he would raise in my boards. Whereas if I, talk to him and he said, I'm just going to play the way I play, I'm not going to change my footwork, then I would be very concerned and maybe wouldn't draft him, right? So maybe that's what you have to pay more attention to, which is, again, part of what makes it so difficult. But yeah, that's what I think. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. Always love hearing from you. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.